I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, culture than pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table, come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. Happy Monday to you all. It is April, and as such, we are in the month of the NFL draft. So today, Dennis and I are going to start looking at some of the rookies that will soon get drafted onto NFL teams and may even have already been drafted onto your dynasty teams. Dennis, how was your weekend?
So my weekend has been filled with anticipation as I head out for vacation tomorrow morning. I had to work Saturday, so it is what it is, and which was fine. And I've been overcome with this laziness that I don't want to really do anything. It's still, the ground's a little too soft. Our grass is growing like crazy, so the lawnmower, just tears up the yard, and so we're going to be gone for 8 days. When we get back, the yard is going to be so bad. It's just going to be a nightmare. But other than that, I'm just kind of just hanging out. I've been in vacation mode for about 5 days. So it's nice to not actually have to go to work and pretend to be in work mode. I love my job and all, but, I've been looking forward to this vacation.
Yeah, sadly, I'm still a little over 2 months from our big summer vacation. This is actually one of the biggest weeks of the year for us at work. So, you and I on opposite planes of existence. I hope you have some relaxation on my behalf.
I'm really good at relaxing. I'll relax good enough for both of us, no problem.
There wasn't a lot of big news this week, so we'll kind of dive in. We were going to look at rookie quarterbacks and running backs. So we'll start with the quarterbacks first. Dennis, you have some rankings and some tiers, but let's start with the big question. Who is your number one?
I've had CJ Stroud as my QB1 in this rookie class for quite some time. As you can see by the Ohio State jerseys behind me, I am a homer. I freely admit it. However, CJ Stroud has looked phenomenal. He's accurate. He can make all the throws. He's got plenty of arm strength. He showed in the Georgia game that he can run if he has to. He just, by and large, chooses not to. So, and when you've got wide receivers like Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, it's pretty easy to see why he's not really looking to run when he's out there. I fully expect him to be the QB, the number one overall pick, the QB1, going to Carolina. They've got a pretty good offensive line. They're putting – they don't have an alpha wide receiver. I don't know that they have the ability to get one in this draft with the draft picks they traded away. But I don't know that they need one in year one. They need reliable people. And I think, Hayden Hurst and who the heck did they sign? Adam Thielen.
And they have Cheetah Shark.
These are all seasoned professionals that are going to provide stability to go along with that offensive line. I like CJ Stroud. He's my QB1. There are I have two other guys in the same tier. And if people want to put Stroud behind one or both of them, there's no need for a street fight. People like their guys. Each of the three brings a little something different to the table. Stroud is my guy at number one.
And it seems like we're pretty set that the kind of top three guys that most people have, the top two have arguably been Stroud and Young, which is what you have, 1 and 2. I do as well. And then Anthony Richardson, who's been coming on quite a bit. A lot of people have at 3. Some people have Will Levis, who we both have at 4. And then, kind of a Hendon Hooker there. That top 5 seems like it's pretty well solidified the last few months. Do you have any concerns at all about Richardson? Do you think some of it depends on where he ends up getting caking?
Well, I don't have concerns. He's immensely talented. He has a big arm. He's fast. He's athletic. He wasn't necessarily a great passer in college, but the Florida team he was on wasn't real good. And he had to do a lot of things on his own. That's why he ran so much. I think, there's a lot of thought that, he could be the next Josh Allen. I don't know. I don't know how many of those are going to come along. But I think we've seen with Cam Newton that you don't necessarily have to be the next Josh Allen, or we've seen with Lamar Jackson, you don't have to be the next Josh Allen to be a successful NFL quarterback and extremely successful for us in fantasy. Richardson has probably the most upside of my tier 1 of quarterbacks, because if he puts it together with his athleticism, he's a guy that's going to be able to make something out of nothing when there's nothing there. And he's got a big enough arm to make any of the throws. It just comes down to, can he kind of rein in that talent, that arm talent, and be able to improve his accuracy? He doesn't like CJ Stroud's like a 67, 68% passer. Bryce Young's up there in the high 60s. He doesn't have to get up there to 67, 68% to be successful. He just needs to get into, 63, 64, up from, 58 or 59 where he's been at in college.
You don't want to see him go the Tebow route and do
right.
48.
And the other knock against him too is I think he's only started 13 games in college. That's not a lot of experience. And we've seen other guys come into the league, Mitch Trubisky, 12 or 13 games. He's the one that comes to my head most recently, but there's been some other people that, Achilles Smith back in the day was a guy.
Trey Lance only started for 1 full season.
Who's that?
Trey Lance.
Yeah. And at a very low competition level. So I think, for Richardson, I don't think he's going to make it out of the top 4, but I don't know that that's going to be great for him, because the teams that are going to be picking up there, unless, if he falls, let's say, to Seattle at 5, where he can go sit for at least a year behind Geno Smith, who knows, maybe 2 years behind Geno Smith, I think a situation like that would be great for him. I just don't know that it's going to work out like that. Arizona is going to need to trade out of 3. So somebody may be coming up there, because there is, in my eyes, there's a clear split between Stroud, Young, and Richardson, and then Levis and Hooker. And honestly, I think Hooker may have more upside than Levis. His big knock is that he's, 66 years old and just now coming into the league.
So you hit on that. A lot of thought that Richardson won't go past the Colts, and I think that's fairly accurate. I don't think that would be a bad spot, at least because Shane Steichen worked with a quarterback that maybe had a similar skill set, so that would be interesting. But I want to come back. You and I both have Levis at 4. Some people have been incredibly high on Will Levis. There was a lot of talk earlier in the draft cycle that he could even be a prospect to go number 1 overall. Why do you have him a little bit lower than your top tier?
Well, he's a prototypical size quarterback, 6'3", 222. He has a tendency to look for off-platform opportunities and then doesn't always convert those. his ball placement can be a little bit inaccurate. He went to Penn State and couldn't beat out Sean Clifford, who's been widely panned as, the greatest Penn State quarterback since, who was that cat? Christian Hackenberg, who, well, we'll leave that one.
We just lost all the Jets fans that were listening,
didn't we? Though, so I like Levis, but I also think that he needs to go somewhere. Let me start that sentence over. It was a mess. He needs to go somewhere where he isn't rushed to play right away either, so that he can get the experience that he needs and learn how to be an NFL quarterback.
Good old Felix popping in there to let us know that Will Levis sucked. He would probably know better than us.
Hackenberg?
I mean, probably both, but he would know better than us. He definitely watches more college games than us.
Yeah. But I don't know. I think Levis is a guy that has potential. He just there's something
Hackenberg
just not quite there with Levis, and he feels a little bit like Jake Locker, Christian Ponderish, has a lot of tools, but he didn't put it all together in college. Maybe the system sometimes propped him up a little bit, and I want to see him be successful, but I'm not sure that he's more toolsy than, say, Hendon Hooker. I think Hendon Hooker has, if he hadn't gotten injured, I think he would be pushing to be in tier one. Hooker's, the big knock on him is that, he didn't have to get to a second read a lot. They would do that 3 receiver stack. And so, they were all breaking in different directions, and his job was just throw it to the one of those guys that's open a lot of the time. Now, he had a lot of downfield plays. Hooker had a lot of downfield plays with Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. And he's a good quarterback. Thing keeping him out of tier one for me is that while he played in that offense and he did everything that was asked of him, we got to see him take that next step. And he is 25 years old. So that to me is just kind of keeps him out of there. He's a guy that if he goes somewhere this season and can sit and just get fully healthy, there's been talk that Minnesota might be looking at drafting Hooker because they can get out of Kirk Cousins after this year. So, they can move right into Hendon Hooker for the next 4 or 5 years. To me, the top 5 has a ton of potential. It could turn out to be a real good class just based on those 5.
Yeah.
But
there's been a lot of talk.
A couple fall on their face.
There's been a lot of talk that Hooker might end up going in the first round also, which would give us 5 potentially first-round quarterbacks.
We got to make it for the 2022 draft. So,
yeah, but that would be from the first time since 18, right? When we had Allen, Sam Darnold, Baker, Josh Rosen, the forgotten one, and Lamar. Yeah. So I'd be kind of curious to see if that happens. Well, so you mentioned the top 5 kind of locked in. We talked about them there. Beyond that, you have a bunch of other people, Stetson Bennett from Georgia, Jake Hanner had a few moments, players like Max Duggan, Tanner McKee, Jaron Hall. What do you think of the rest of the quarterbacks, and are there any that could catch your eye if they landed in the right spot?
It's interesting that you referred to them as other people as opposed to other quarterbacks. I think that's a telltale.
Quarterbacks are people too,
So, I like Stetson Bennett. Again, another older guy, but he's smaller. He's only 5'11", but he's got a pretty strong arm, and he's experienced. Like, he comes into the league. Like, I think he literally played like 9 years of college football. He started at Georgia, left and went to a junior college, came back to Georgia. He was in and out of Georgia, seems like a couple times. He's athletic enough, and he almost, he's going to need to be some sort of kind of combination of Russell Wilson, Drew Brees to make it happen. He's going to need everything to come together. He needs to be accurate. He needs to be mobile to get out of the pocket so he can see where things are. Hopefully passing lanes open up. I want to see Stetson Bennett go somewhere where he has a legitimate way and kind of get, I don't want him to get Davis Mills where he goes somewhere. He's a 4th or 5th round pick. They don't expect anything of him. They're going to throw him in and he's winging it for a half a season and just trying to figure it out because he really isn't ready. And it's not the type of job where you go in and you say, you know what, I think I need I'm not quite ready for that. Let somebody else do this, But we've got a couple quarterback situations out there that aren't terrific. Tampa.
How do you know he couldn't come in and Brock Purdy it and just, didn't expect him to play?
He could. Yeah, honestly, he could. Because I think he has probably as many or more starts than Brock Purdy had, which is good. There's a lot of, I know we love early breakouts because they tend to come to the NFL and be productive because they break out early because they're good. But there's also, I think at the quarterback position, there's something to be said for starting a significant number of games. There's no substitute for experience. My son is a guitar player. And when he started, he used to ask me, like, how do you get good? And I just tell him, look, you just got to practice. You just got to play songs and keep playing them. And he would get frustrated. And I think quarterback position is very much the position where you want to make sure that you're getting as many live reps at each level as you can, because you can only do so many mental reps because it's different when you've got big guys coming at you.
All right. Well, that kind of gets us through quarterbacks that you're going to be looking at. You'll probably get a little bit deeper on the list if you're in a super flex, and we'll see where some of these land and some of the opportunities they might have. But I want to swing over to running backs, and this is kind of probably the heart of this class, and that begins with everyone's number one, not only number one at running backs, but pretty much number one overall, which is Bijan Robinson. Dennis, 2 questions for you. The first, if you were fortunate enough to have 101 in a rookie draft, what would it take to pry it away from you, knowing that you had a shot at Bijan Robinson? And number 2, Robinson and Jahmyr Gibbs are pretty much have been 1 and 2 in this class. How big of a gap is there for you between those 2 prospects?
So I have a few 101s. And what will it take for me to give that up? All of it. I mean, I've had a couple offers that to me, I'm waiting to see where what happens on draft day. And I don't mean NFL draft day. I mean my rookie draft day. That's when I'm going to hold those 101s until late, unless somebody comes in with a mountain of picks and players. But what I'm not looking for is I don't want the 102 and then 3/3, 4/4 and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, as much as I love Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I'm going to need more premium assets than that just to give up the 101. So I'm willing to wait, and I'm willing to take Bijan, whether I need him or not. And I saw Thor Nystrom released a 2-round mock draft, and I was looking through that, and I forget exactly. And he released it, and he also included comps, who he comped the player to. And I forget. I think he had Bijan going to Dallas, which could be good, could be not good. It's such a Jerry move; it ain't even funny. But his comp was Edger and James. I've seen. There are a lot of comps I've seen, and I think I like that one the best. Edger and James was great in Indianapolis. He could do everything. He was a bell cow. He was an exceptional receiver. I think Bijan, part of a lot of the comps I've seen, what gives me pause is that Bijan is only about 212, 214 pounds, and he keeps getting comped to guys that are 230, like Saquon Barkley and stuff. And to me, that just doesn't connect as well. But when I see Edgerrin James, who is I think he was like 5'11 and 212, to me that's like a great that one works for me. How big is the gap between him and Gibbs? I wrestle with Gibbs, and I actually have Zach Charbonnet in the same tier as Gibbs. They're two very different running backs. Gibbs, my biggest issue is that while he's an exceptional pass receiver, virtually a wide receiver at the running back position, and he can run well, and he runs well inside. He at 199 pounds, there's only going to be so much of a beating he can take. And when he gets inside, he's looking to get outside. And sometimes he gets caught up in the mix just because he is smaller and not as heavy. He's a little more susceptible to the arm tackle. Charbonnet, on the other hand, is a bigger back, 220 pounds, 6 foot tall, good receiver, not a receiver in the class of Jahmyr Gibbs. But Charbonnet, he can play all three downs. He can run inside. He's got good vision. I don't know if his vision is quite as good as Gibbs, but Gibbs is, when he's deep inside, I think Gibbs may struggle a little bit. If there's a little bit of space, I think he's got real good vision. He can see the hole. Whereas Charbonnet, he may not be able to take it all the way, but when it's pretty muddied up there, he has enough power to get through and maybe get to the next level and see if there's a hole there. So they're pretty clearly my tier 2.
So before we move on, Felix has a great question that kind of goes with our discussion of the 101. He's in a 14-team PPR Superflex league. Only QB is Fields. He has the 101. His RBs aren't great. Would you go Bijan Robinson or CJ Stroud? I'm just going to say I would go Bijan Robinson myself.
Yeah, I think I feel like Stroud or Robinson is still the 101. I think it's close enough if you want to draft for team need that you could take a quarterback. Though something John Hanson says always rings in my ears when I think about drafting for team need. He says, if you're always drafting for team need instead of best player, you're always going to have needs. And so Bijan is probably, he's the surest thing in the class. Now watch him fall on his face, and this will be all over Twitter, me saying that. But
he'll be interested in running into his lineman, you mean?
I think, if you take Bijan and you need running backs, I think you could, and you need a quarterback, I think you could trade Bijan for a decent quarterback and running back combination from somebody that has depth in a 14-teamer. I think you'd be able to make that deal. Whereas if you took Stroud, I don't know that you could trade Stroud for the same level of quarterback and running back that you can Bijan.
Yeah, and I mean, if you were telling me that you had like McCaffrey and Jonathan Taylor and Najee Harris as your running backs, then maybe I'd say go ahead and get a quarterback. But noting that your RBs aren't great, you basically have need in both areas. I'm going with the best player that I can get at 101. So you kind of mentioned that you have Bijan on top, your next tier. You have Gibbs and Charbonnet. There's been a lot of, I've seen different kind of rankings and groupings once you get beyond kind of the top 3. A lot of people have Charbonnet as that third running back as well. But what is your next tier? How many guys are in it? And what is the one that's most intriguing to you in that group?
So my next tier, I've got Tank Bigsby out of Auburn, Tyjae Spears out of Tulane, Devin Achane of Texas A&M, and Roshan Johnson out of Texas. I like Bigsby. To me, seems like an old school bell cow back. He's 6 foot, 211 pounds, I think, 208 6'8", somewhere in that range. He's not a great pass catcher. He's capable check down pass catcher. He caught 62 passes in 3 years at Auburn, but he only had 1,000-yard season. He played on some fairly lousy teams. To me, he's almost, and it's a uniform comparison. Helmet scouting, because he does run a little bit upright. He reminds me of a little bit more powerful Kerryon Johnson. And like I seen Kerryon Johnson in college have some games where he was just willing Auburn. Bigsby just seems like he has a little bit more power than that. He doesn't run quite as upright. It feels like he'll be able to stay a little bit healthier. Tyjae Spears, on the other hand, does a lot of stuff well. He's another small back, 5'9", 201. But he's explosive. If he lands in, I don't think he's going to have the potential to be a bell cow. It's easy to say, well, Austin Eckler is his ceiling. That's a pretty high ceiling. I think that's the extreme high end of his ceiling. I don't know that he can get to that level, but he's really good. He runs the ball well. He does have some power for his size. He's shifty in the hole, and he's got speed, and he can catch the ball well. Devin Achane is the wild card in this group for me because he's 188 pounds. And while he's fast, he does a lot of things well. That size makes me have pause because I feel like he's going to be limited by whatever team. I think we're seeing it happen now with DeAndre Swift. 5'9", 209 theoretically has the size, the BMI, but he seems to get injured every year. And so now we're looking at a guy, Achane, who's 5'9", 188. If he starts taking hits like that, is he going to be able to hold up? He's explosive. He's a very, very fast running back, catches the ball well. There are a lot of guys over Diamond. I think Jared is RB3. And to me, he's a little bit small. And then Roschon Johnson is just the opposite of Devin Achane. He's a 6 foot, 219-pound back. He only ran like a 4.57, I think. So he's not fast. He's not real explosive. He's powerful. He sees the field well. He can catch the ball decently. He kind of is one of these guys that is he's got 3-down ability, but I don't know that he has the explosion consistently or the consistent vision to take advantage of being big enough to get that opportunity. I like him a lot, and he landing in the right spot. You could see him step into a role like Dameon Pierce did, or like Isaiah Pacheco did. He's just got to find that right spot, and it could happen. We don't see a lot of running backs making 40-yard runs. So the 4.57, well, you'd like him to be a little bit faster. It isn't the be-all, end-all. David Montgomery has been very successful, and I think he ran like a 4.6. There are a lot of backs that run in that high 4.5, low 4.6 range that have great careers, in part because they get the volume. They stay healthy so they can handle the volume. And they do a few things at a high enough level that the teams just aren't looking to replace them.
So it looks like in your next tier of running backs, you have 3 more guys that would round out your top 10. What are that next tier?
So I got Kendre Miller, Kenny McIntosh, and Izzy Abanikanda. So this is kind of where it starts to get a little bit iffy for me. Miller looked pretty good. He's got a lot of explosiveness. He's agile, has good leg strength, and he's able to change directions pretty well. But he's a little bit upright. He's got some hip tightness. Doesn't make his running he doesn't cut real well because of that. He's great. If he's going in a relatively straight line and the hole opens up, he's going to get through it really well. But if you've got him running parallel to the line and he's got make a cut up, he can get caught up there pretty good. He's not Kenny McIntosh is a guy that 6'206", has good size also, but Georgia doesn't use their backs a lot. They don't bell cow their backs. They use a lot of backs. Last use McIntosh, they use Kendall Milton and Braylon Allen, and they just spread the ball around. When DeAndre Swift was there, when Nick Chubb was there, Sony Michel, that's just how they run their offense. McIntosh, however, is a really, really good pass receiver. Like, he's practically a wide receiver at the running back position. And at 5'11" or 6'206", that's real good size. But then he didn't run great when he ran his 40. Again, he was another guy that timed high in the 40. It doesn't necessarily show that slow on tape when you watch it, but it's certainly pause for concern. And then Israel Abanikanda is a running back that is just, he's got speed. He's fast. Had a great career at Pitt. He's passable in the passing game. Maybe more of a straight ahead guy. I'd like to see him, after my failure with Quadri Allison, I'd like to see Abanikanda come in out of Pitt and do well. He's a guy that he almost reminds me a little bit of Isaiah Pacheco in that, while he's getting a little more run in the press than Pacheco did, he's one of these guys that's fast and he's got good size, and he may get overlooked because there's just fancier names. He's a little bit of an older prospect, I think. And so you might see Abanikanda slide a little bit, but then, go in and earn his stripes on special teams, returning kicks. And then when he gets a shot to run the ball, perform and make it hard to keep him off the field.
So to kind of close out your top 15, you have your next tier has 5 guys from 11 to 15. Why don't you give us that tier?
So that tier has Eric Gray, Evan Hull, Sean Tucker, Chase Brown, and Zach Evans. And this is one of those tiers that's, it seems like
where you might shed some tears.
No, these are all guys that have something, and they're all about the same size. They're that 5'10", 5'11", 209, somewhere between 207 and 213 kind of thing. And they all do something noteworthy, and they all have issues. Eric Gray, he transferred from Tennessee to Oklahoma and looked like he was ready to take off. And his first year at Oklahoma just wasn't very good. Last year, he had a real good year. I mean, he's got starter size, 5'9", 207, 209. Catches the ball fairly well, can run well, but he's just, is there enough heart there? Is there, does he need everything to go right, or can he make his own opportunity? Evan Hull out of Northwestern, 5'11", 209, ran a 4.3 something at the combine. Doesn't play that fast. His tape does not look like he runs a 4.3, but he's a fantastic pass receiver. Him landing like with the Rams and ending up being the 1B to Cam Akers 1A, the passing down back there. I think he would thrive in a role like that. He runs okay, but he's a little bit stiff in his running, but he's just a really good receiving back. Kind of reminds me of a guy like Rex Burkhead, who's got decent size, but just for whatever reason doesn't quite have the athleticism to be, the shiftiness to be an outstanding running back. But he can be a good back for years, and you can put him in there at any time, and he's going to do the right thing. He just has limitations. Sean Tucker's a track guy, 5'9", 207. He's fast. his situation's weird. Had some medical issues, didn't participate in the combine, and didn't participate in the pro day, but then released a video of him, running the 40 and doing this stuff. And it's like, wait a minute, we're going to take, that's not how this is supposed to work. We need to get, for lack of a better term, third-party verification, and just watching a tape doesn't necessarily, watching a tape with my stopwatch isn't necessarily third-party verification. I don't know if he'll work out again before the draft. I haven't heard what the medical issue is, and so it seems a little bit weird. But he doesn't seem to have the greatest vision. He's got some size. He feels like he should be more powerful than he is. Seems like he's always looking to get outside and use his speed. And sometimes you just got to go forward. And he kind of, him and the next guy both kind of do that same thing where, they're always looking to pop it to the outside because they think they can take it all the way, and they leave yards on the field. At 14, I got Chase Brown. He's the fourth guy in this tier. Brown had a great year last year at Illinois. Everybody knows his story by now, moving from Canada down to Florida, him and his twin brother and mom, trying to give them an opportunity for a career, for a college education and a career. It's a great story. He went to the Senior Bowl, and one of our writers over at Dynasty Nerds was down there and actually interviewed him. He didn't look great in the Senior Bowl practices. He got his ass handed to him in the pass blocking drills. Like one of the first plays that he was in on in the first practice, he just got bowled over, just completely destroyed in a pass blocking drill. And to add salt to the wound, the guy that did it was his twin brother, Sidney, who's a safety at Illinois, just kind of bullied him a little bit. He didn't have a great week in the Senior Bowl. He played okay in the game. He went to the combine. He had a good combine, looked athletic, but the tape, when it comes to the passing game, is just underwhelming. Does not seem like he either knows where to be when it comes to pass blocking, or he knows he just doesn't want to get there because he doesn't like it. We'll see what happens with him. I'm sure there's going to be some coach that thinks they can coach that out of him. Zach Evans, some people have him a lot higher. He was at SMU, decided he didn't like having the competition there. And so then he transferred to Ole Miss, where he ended up in competition in a committee again. And he's got some speed, some shiftiness. Almost feels like there might be a little bit of a desire issue. When you see him kind of take the easy way out and transfer, and then we'll have to see. He's a good pass catcher. He's got some speed, and he's got good size. I think he's about 215. So running back is a position that's weird, in that just about, it only takes the right opportunity. It only takes one team to fall in love with your traits and have a plan. We've seen mediocre backs go to San Francisco, and when Mike Shanahan was in Denver, go to Denver and just put up phenomenal years. There are some teams and some schemes that it doesn't take. You don't need to have a whole toolbox of exceptional traits. You just need to do what they tell you, and if you do that, you'll be successful. I don't know what that means for Zach Evans, but he's definitely gonna get an opportunity to play somewhere. Let's see how it shakes out.
Boy, that description of San Francisco, I don't know what that says about Trey Sermon, but nothing good. Nothing good.
Well, it's because somebody else came in there and did it.
Okay, so that's your top 15. What is one guy that you don't currently have in your top 15 that intrigues you?
Probably. So there's a couple guys that do. Like in my next tier, I got Mo Ibrahim and Dwayne McBride. Ibrahim is, he measured like 2.5 inches shorter than he was listed. He has a lot of touches, and he's had a lot of injuries, and I feel like he's a guy that's gonna probably get an opportunity, but may not be able to make the most of it because of injuries. We see guys come into the league, they show enough to get drafted, but they just never get healthy. They never get an opportunity to be healthy, stay healthy. I like Dwayne McBride. He looks quick, but he looks like he's got Jordan Howard hands. And so he feels like if he gets an opportunity, he's going to be a strict 2-down guy. And then Xavier Valladay out of Arizona State's another guy. He looks a little bit like Rachaad White in that he's a really good receiver and he runs really upright. I just don't think he had quite the production at all levels that White did. He's a guy that may get a shot, but McBride is probably the one that I think could end up being the most impactful, but it's going to be in a 2-down role.
So I know a lot of people love Bijan Robinson. I do too. But overall, how do you feel about the class of 2023 running backs here heading into the draft?
I think it's a really deep class. And so teams by and large now are going to committees. I mean, we saw even Saquon Barkley, Matt Breida was getting a fair amount of touches. He wasn't getting 45%, but he was getting enough that it was notable. We've seen Zeke get phased out. He got cut. He was one of the last great workhorses. Derrick Henry is probably, wouldn't surprise me if Derrick Henry is the last great workhorse for some time. It's changing, and teams they're not looking necessarily to use, I want a running back for first and short and a running back for second and medium and a running back for third and long. They want guys that can do 2 to 3 of those, change them and keep them healthy instead of a running back getting 325 touches. Now you're looking at 2 guys getting 175 and staying healthy and more explosive all season long, even though they do similar things.
I blame Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
Just as with all things. Quarterback, we seem like we're pretty set. I don't really foresee the draft and draft landing spots changing a lot with the top 5, and beyond the top 5, it's kind of roulette anyway. For you with running backs, how much do you think draft capital and draft landing spot is going to alter your rankings before going into drafts?
I don't think it's going to alter it a lot, because even if let's say Dallas does draft Bijan Robinson, I think that we know we have seen how Dallas uses a bell cow back in Tony Pollard, and so then Bijan just slides right into the old Zeke role, getting 15, 18 carries a game and a little bit of passing down work. Chicago, they've got Herbert and Dante Foreman. They're going to be looking for something. But what is that player going to get? Atlanta, they got Tyler Algier and Cordero Patterson. Would it be nice to see, say, Tank Bigsby go to Atlanta? Yeah, because I think he's better than Tyler Algier. But does that mean that he's going to take over that role? And I mean, Algier only had 224 carries last year. So it isn't like he's going to all of a sudden go down to 0 and Tank's going to shoot up there. Miami, they signed all of their running backs back, and they have the most pedestrian group of running backs I think I've ever seen. But is it going to surprise anybody if they draft one and give them a shot? I think Kansas City is going to be looking for a passing down back to pair with Isaiah Pacheco. So somebody like Xavier Valladay that's a good pass catcher, or Evan Hull who's a good pass catcher, or heck, Devin Achane who can play that Jerick McKinnon role, run it a few times here and there, but take 6, 7, 8 targets. That would just be terrible to watch him go to Kansas City. But there are those kinds of opportunities. Large. But what a bell cow looks like anymore. The days of the 25 week after week are gone. So now is a bell cow 17 touches? Is it 15 touches? I don't know. We'll have to see.
Just need them to score those points. Just need them to score those points.
That's it.
Well, hopefully, if nothing else, this got you a little more hyped up for the NFL draft, which is a 3-day extravaganza coming to close
days
out
away.
the month of April. On Friday, Matt and Dennis will be back looking at rookie pass catchers who are going to be in the upcoming draft. And if, as a reminder, we will be out next Monday because Dennis is on vacation. I'll be recovering from my week at work. So you'll have to find, maybe listen back to old episodes, ask us Twitter questions because we might still answer those. I am going to say, if you want to subscribe and listen, that would be great. We are still in the process of migrating. If you missed that news on Friday, we are going to be going back to our old hosting site, which, might mean that you were subscribed, you lost us, and we're coming right back at you. So it could be a good thing. But stay tuned for a little bit more on those details. Maybe Matt and Dennis will even have an update by the time we get to Friday. But Dennis, anything else you want to say wrapping up today?
Just looking forward to vacation. I'd say, wherever you find us, rate, review, subscribe. We'll be somewhere. Take us with you.
And the important thing is, you have 24 days left before the draft, which means